Entering the world of the Amazing Digital Circus, a new human character appears into the middle of an intro number and bumps into a certain character that she will first encounter. Jax, a gaudy mauve cartoon rabbitoid who relishes in making fun of others and violence for the sake of pleasure, is not just a bully, but the most complex character in the series. While he shows villainous and inexcusable behavior, along with simple laissez-faire attitude with a unique design reminiscent of Morph, his ordeals and vulnerability from his unspoken dark past can make us understand his moral psyche. So, let's dive into it. Jax is introduced to be a mischievous, sassy, cocky, conceited, and sardonic cartoon rabbit who doesn't disclose affection with anyone. He enjoys the caricature of being the spunky comic relief who relishes in taunting and harassing others for his own pleasure. He's a blatant bully that is insufferable to others, especially when things don't go his way. His first line of dialogue is,
"Kane, is this one of your NPCs or is this a new sucker?"
He purposely strides upon Gangle's already shattered comedy mask, snaps Google's arm to use as a back scratcher, pushes Gangle away from the escalator, and even blackmails her to drive in a reckless manner to crash into the bandits. This demonstrates how he shows no care in morality and is why the other cast of characters dislike and steer away from him. He has constant rivalries with the circus inmates, insulting and treating them as if they're NPCs. He likes to mess with and insult the crew, such as leaving a centipede in Ragatha's room, mocking her for telling her what to do like a parent, and for acting like everything is fine. He likes to mess with Zubo for whatever a jobber statement said, and teases Gangle for her interests and abuses her for her submissive behavior for his own benefit. He even makes sarcastic remarks regarding Kinger's kooky archetype. He also displays little common sense. When he sucks up the ghost narrator before completing the tutorial, he says obliviously,
"What? I thought we were supposed to capture all the ghosts."
He loses focus easily, forgot to tell Kane about the Daisy thing, and does impulsive things without thinking. His impulsive behavior and immense enthusiasm for violence is apparent when he's ecstatic about the prospect of shooting the bandits until unrecognizable, and his suggestions are always of him doing some sort of act of torment, such as shooting his crewmates as animal game, portrays an Australian extremist, and impulsively shoots Ragatha when given the right to bear arms. He also gets sulky and insolent when the opportunity for chaotic adventure doesn't arise, and he despises monotonous, tedious tasks, especially under their repercussion. In episode 2, he expresses disappointment as not having a final battle, and his craving for chaos is only satisfied with the Fudge's terrorization. In episode 3, he is miserable and agitated, lacking the composure to behave professionally, and after his exodus, his mask falls into an expression of exasperated misery as he collapses onto his cartwheel. He even hates being the subject of ridicule, but likes it when he's the instigator. This is common bullying behavior as, quote, "Those with impaired mental health may elicit aggressive behaviors in others by going against expectations, irritating colleagues, and violating social norms," end quote. He uses it as a constant bullying tactic, but whenever he's the subject of laughing matter, he goes ballistic, hunting down those that ridicule him with an expression of fury mixed with flushed cheeks. While he may have been tormented and ridiculed in his human life, he makes the situation worse by tormenting others just so he could feel better about himself and remove his insecurities. While brief, Jax breaks character lacking light compassion for his friends. He hints concern when Kaufmo's funeral is brought up, he grows comfortable being open about his feelings of Pomni, and says Gangle likes it when he's mean to her, showing brief moments of his caring nature, until he immediately pulls himself back into the careless, snarky, I couldn't care less attitude to avoid self-acknowledgement. Also, it is suggested when Ragatha accuses him of corrupting Pomni, he defends himself by shooting her multiple times, insult that she pointed fingers at him for something he didn't commit. Pomni is introduced as a nervous wreck asking many questions while wondering why there isn't an exit. She is represented as the nurturing, kind, insightful, and observant protagonist, and is not shy being the one to reach out to aid in others' issues. Jax, being the casual, couldn't careless brute who never owns up to his behavior, is unsympathetic, spiteful, and negligent. Someone who couldn't take anything seriously nor care about anyone, and shows no remorse when sneering or tormenting colleagues. But ever since Pomni's entrance, something in Jax gradually began to change. At the conclusion of episode 3, he approaches Pomni and asks her,
So what was it like being stuck with the nutcase?
hoping to get a reaction, but unfulfilled with her unprejudiced response. In episode 4, he remarks,
Darn, I guess you're never getting that unicorn horn, Pomni.
implying that he was considering getting her one. Later, he moodily passes out, asking her how she was doing, before bidding her a casual later, which he never does to anyone else. Dee suggests that he's beginning to reach out to her. Throughout episode 5, he seems to be more observant with her feelings, as during his present adventure, he writes in Kinger's brief in caps lock Comic Sans, "Note, no funny business. Do not embarrass the president of this great nation," suggesting he is being protective over Pomni. He says he's on her side, assuring that she's safe as long as she follows her heart. He begins approaching Pomni first during the latter lightning round and opens up to her in a way he hasn't done to others. We see him express his vulnerability as he discloses his perspective that he had never shared with anyone else, and snapping back to his sassy personality, remarking how his ears and once absent tail show the pinnacle of masculinity, while Pomni makes a sarcastic laugh, growing on him. Jax even shows more respect towards her by seeming genuinely interested in her backstory, and is the only member of the circus he doesn't mock. He even apologizes to her, something he's never done before, and even jumps behind her towards her whenever Corn is in sight. Brief moments of their interactions include glancing at each other, Pomni declining to vote to humiliate Jax, comparable to the president scene, and Jax inviting her to show a thing in the hallway, indicating they are beginning to grow trust and a mutual bond. Fast forward to episode 6 after the favorite character war announcement. They have an indistinct hallway conversation, and Pomni doesn't scold him for jeering Zubul and summoning Cain. They become partners. In this episode, however, their worldviews and relationship become more apparent. In the hallway scene, Pomni shows mere reluctance on killing any of her friends, but will provide guns and support Jax from the side, as she sees the laws of the universe still apply to the digital realm. Jax, noticing Pomni's worldview, counsels her by delineating his own, which sees a fine line drawn between reality and virtual reality, that they are merely two-dimensional cartoon characters where nothing is consequential nor real in the digital sphere. Breaking character, Jax decides to drop the Gesture Act and be earnest for the first time, giving her a heartfelt moment that he's aware she hates it at the circus, everyone does, but he says warmly and encouragingly that she is free and just let loose. During their Kinger battle in the unlit hallway, he automatically apologizes to her for accidentally shooting Pomni, and is instantly worried for her safety when she races after Zubul, visibly showing signs of sympathy. As Pomni was beginning to be more comfortable around him, she was beginning to reveal other parts of herself which she hasn't disclosed to others. Rather than being a shy, nervous doormat, she's more vocal, sassy, spontaneous, reckless, and bold by teasing him and telling him not to deny that he's afraid of Corn, and Jax has no problems with answering questions about himself. These instances show she does share small similarities with Jax. It reminds me of the bar scene when she was explaining how she was seeking adventure by exploring and filming abandoned buildings to escape her normal life. It makes her a unique character, and it appears that Jax is showing sympathy towards her as she tells him her backstory. It even shows that during the conversations that Jax was helping Pomni step out of her shell and not be so nervous about being herself. With their yin and yang dynamic, Pomni letting loose becoming courageous and Jax softening up becoming compassionate, they complement each other in memorable ways and reveal both their hidden psychologies that was unknown. However, during their conversation, he veers the conversation away from him as a subject matter to avoid her getting to know him further in fear of forming a bond with someone he may lose. Following their climatic defeat of Zubul, Pomni, elated, jumps to give him a hug. He briefly shows appreciation, but in a split second with an expression of horror, shoves her away with his left hand. Confused, he brushes it off, and Pomni shakes it off as playful banter. However, after distractedly staring at his left hand in awe, he uses his cool demeanor by forcing her to shoot him, denying the presumption that they were ever a team or friends. Pomni confronts him that he doesn't attend his friends' funerals to avoid emotional release, and after suggesting this attitude could cause abstraction, he becomes extremely livid, saying she doesn't comprehend how unpleasant humans can be before he slowly morphs into his signature expression, preventing further emotional disclosure. After framing his lie that he would forget about her as a facetious quip, Pomni thrusts a gun at him, fights him, testing his feelings for her, threatening him to fight back. But he doesn't. He just angrily denies that he cares, telling her that he cannot care about anyone, relishing in being the villain. After swearing, he plainly tells her to stop searching for anything more to him, as he gloomily drags off. At the character awards, Jax appears to regret what he's done to Pomni. His sorrowful expression shifts to immense distress. His foot bounces up and down rapidly before he dashes to the restroom. Collapsing on the sink, he limply reaches to turn the faucet on. His breathing turns into hyperventilating. The camera is shaking, heart is thundering, tinnitus is heard, his vision's going in and out, and his outlines glowing, signaling he's near abstraction. He droopily looks at his reflection, eyes weary and dispirited.
God, looks stupid.
Pomni, about to vacate her seat to find him, notices him sporting a facade grin. Jax refuses to admit he has any problems and treads for his room. He sinks into sorrow as he weakly flips over the photos of his two abstracted friends. Then, as he purposefully reaches out his arm for the other, as if he were passing through a barrier, he makes direct contact with the unknown index, until he is entering into the first stage of abstraction. In a relaxed, sedative state, he follows his friend's fractal images, until he jolts awake in sheer panic, heart beating.
Pomni asks if they can talk, revealing that they may have found a way to leave.
Jax glumly hands them over the keys before Pomni stops him from closing the door. She earnestly asks him whether he wants to come with them, as it may be their only chance. Jax reluctantly agrees, but he's still incredibly skeptical that Abel is an NPC and is all a game set by Cain. Despite his incredulity, he plays along with the objective and follows Abel's instructions. Recovering a snarky attitude, he jeers.
What's the rush? You got someone waiting for you outside? Don't you?
Jax flinches,
Yeah.
shooting his gaze downward. He still decides to avoid Pomni as much as possible. When Pomni gives him the pass to leave, he snatches it from her grip, avoiding all contact as she begrudgingly looks away. Abel handpicks Jax to be first to enter the portal.
Me? Why me?
Sensing he's startled and uneasy, Pomni replies to him in a concerned but consoling and nurturing way. He stares at her with fear and consternation until he begrudgingly says,
Fine.
He's lured by the entrance. But during their passage, he is no longer in awe, but trails behind everyone else. Blankly staring at the cabin's snow globe brooding, tells Pomni he's great when she approaches him, and even resists to hold her hand with an expression of melancholy. This reaches the moment where it is the most extreme of all that Jax has undergone. As the circus crew inch toward approaching the master console, each cut goes to him looking even more disturbed and frightful than the last, with teeth grating, fists clenched, constricted eyes darting with fright, and respiratory rate incrementing. As tensions begin to rise between the characters, Jax has reached his turning point, hyperventilating as he sees an image of a suburban neighborhood and his view racing on a windy road with a damaged hood, as if he were escaping from a pursuer. He exerts panicked whimpering as he is stimulated to press the red button. The series presents him as a morally ambiguous character. He relishes in the persona of a crude, conceited jerk who taunts everyone and even refuses to be present at one's funeral. However, his uses of wrath, cruelty, and violence can be seen as a mechanism for self-defense. Hating being the subject of mockery himself, he has a psychological trigger to lash out or threatening to kill others. Other self-destructing behaviors are social isolation from creating meaningful relationships and refusal to acknowledge his emotions. Obviously, after that, he becomes attached to Pomni, developing a meaningful friendship, which he decides to put an end to in fear of growing close with and losing her, causing greater damage. but it also presents his dark and vulnerable moments due to his trauma in the real and digital landscape, which makes him feel alone and that coerced him to respond in a negative way of bottling his emotions in fear of revealing what he feels that wants him to remain trapped in the stasis pod. It is unclear as to whether Cain and Abel inserted or allowed that memory to be respawned or be salvaged from his memory, or whether they actually piloted his mind. But in my analysis, it's that he acted in response to the traumatic vision suddenly re-emerging in his memory, so lurid that he did not want to leave at all costs. CNA has complete authority over their minds, allowing them to control memory, what they remember and how they remember it, and that will induce them to act on that known information. Cackling maniacally, he slams his fists against the console and tearfully lashes out at Cain for getting into his head, and he reproaches at him for the ability to control each of their minds. With that last line,
God knows what else.
he briefly regards his left hand, the one that shoved Pomni, as if he were realizing that Cain influences fear of becoming emotionally attached to her so that he will not furnish that relationship. He does not want to face the fears of reality that he has faced and or caused, and that led him to act on his own behavior to make the choice for the rest of the team. While it is possible that Cain and Abel executives do indeed control their minds after plugging in memories to any port to persuade them to do a certain action, I don't necessarily believe he was possessing his mind in the sense that he goes on autopilot for Cain to maneuver him to slam the red button. It suggests that Jax could have had the willpower to resist the temptation of pressing the red button to remain in the digital loophole, but based on what he remembers, and since his past was incredibly impactful and traumatic for him that he wanted to escape in the first place, the images flashing in his mind induced him to enact on his impulses to those flashes that Cain, or executives of CNA, could have enforced on him, not that Cain was piloting the move himself. He probably uses violence as a mechanism for release. He gets enthusiastic when there's a gun in sight and looks for any potential for bloodshed to keep him mentally stable after the loss of his friends. It was not yet disclosed of what his past held, but before his confinement in the digital circus, his preceding experience consisted of possible turmoil and tragedy. The only piece of evidence is when a flashback of his possible suburban neighborhood at dusk and him racing on a dark, windy road with a broken car front. Could be surmised that he accidentally crashed his car and, feeling guilty, he races away. He could also be running from a law enforcement or even a dangerous pursuer. Another theory is that he was bullied during his childhood and even abused by a parental or guardian figure. Bowlby's attachment theory says, quote, children develop maladaptive internal working models of relationships when caregivers are unreliable, absent, or unresponsive. These disruptions in the attachment process produce intense anger, anxiety, fear, and grief, and leads to the development of maladaptive affective regulation patterns, end quote. These symptoms correlate with Jax's maladaptive behaviors and withdrawal from others, and even how his self-consciousness helps motivate his attitude. As Jax begins to reach out to Pomni, he does not behave as a villain, but breaks character by unraveling his emotions, such as how Ragnar sounds manipulative, which may reflect past real-world experiences. But since Jax is traumatized after the abstraction, he teases and manipulates her into thinking it's not real, when in reality he's petrified with forming the same bond again, which leads to his manipulation and verbally abuses Pomni by telling her mean things such as he pretended to bond with her because it was funny, telling she was misremembering, and he was the one who reached out first. Jax is an incredibly fascinating character, as he is neither a heroic character nor an antagonist, but someone that is broken and lost with turmoil and with a skewed view of reality due to the human experience. To further avoid his pain, he adopts a nihilistic viewpoint, which, according to Alan Pratt from Embry-Riddle University, he thinks nothing else matters. He views the laws of reality as separate from the laws of the video game universe, denying to see his counterparts as humans with real sentience. He deflects acknowledgement of his emotions to blot out painful memories and what he really feels about others, and is terrified of forming attachments to anyone or revealing that he needs anyone. Nevertheless, by surrendering the furnishing of those relationships, he abandons all meaning. He abandons essential experiences that he would have had, which it would have impacted him in ways he couldn't have imagined. The morally ambiguous character can allow us audience members to acknowledge some parts of Jackson's society and understand the cataclysmic effects it would generate should some similar or equal coping mechanisms be employed. If there is any situation or conflict we're facing, we should not confiscate our natural emotions, but acknowledge and navigate our organic tendencies in a healthy manner with the right tools, and there is nothing wrong with seeking support. Until the next episode, we will not know the reason behind his malevolent motivations. We'll just have to hope he embarks on the path of acknowledgement, reparation, and reconciliation, bringing him at peace with his humanity.